Hi, this is Tammy, one of the hosts of KosherSALT Radio, and you are listening to our episode titled Desires of the Flesh.
Overindulge in these things, but think of the flesh as like this hungry lion that's want to eat everything within its sight.
Yeah.
And from there, the spirit is more so at the end of the day, like just calm down on that. Like it's not that deep, but it is so deep to the flesh that it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Paul talks about in Romans 8 that, I'll read it. Oh God, I'm ripping these pages. Alright, so Paul talks about, basically it's like, for the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has made me free from the laws of sin and death. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sent His only Son to basically die for us, so that He may become like the sinful flesh that we are in, right? He said that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. And this is the point right here. It says, for to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can it be. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please God, but ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. So what it's basically telling us, so we have to understand that the flesh is something that's carnal. And to be carnal, it means to be not spiritual. So you now, like you said, that is a war between the spiritual and the non-spiritual. And remember that we're born in this warfare, because Paul talks about there are laws in his members which war against each other. So in our members, that which is sin, which is death, is fighting against the spirit, eternal life. So we are in this constant battle, like she said, that we want to do the right things, but the flesh, which are the desires that we're born with, continue to fight against each other, because it's just this constant battle between good and evil. So when I understand the desire of the flesh, I understand it as the unspiritual meeting with the spiritual. And then when you have those two things combining, that's where the war begins, because one wants to conquer another. So when we desire these things, we're always, every time we desire something, we fight against that thing, like hands down, because we always think, should we really do that? It's always a constant question. Oh, if like I need money, should I go steal? Or if I want to please my sexual drive, should I go pay for somebody? Or should I? There's always this battle. Like we always question something that we want, hands down. Like I'm gonna go for it. You don't hands down like I'm just gonna do it. You always question it. So when I think about that, it's just the spiritual meeting the unspiritual.
It's interesting. When you were saying, hey, if I want this, I'm gonna go out and do this, or if I want that, I'm gonna go out and do that. I think a lot of times people feel that way, especially like as far as desiring their flesh, is because they feel like they're in it by themselves. One of the things that when you sit down and talk to somebody about, man, hey brother, what's going on? Why are you going through this? Oh man, I understand. No, you don't. You don't have to go through what I go through. You don't walk through you haven't walked through my shoes. And I was just reading. There's a book called The War Within: Flesh versus Spirit, and it says, if the Christian life looks too hard, we must remember that we are not called to live it by ourselves. We must live it by the Spirit of God, and that's true. When we feel like we're alone, we're really not. But we because since we don't have that relationship with Christ, we feel like that everything that we do, we're doing it by ourselves, and we have to be like, hey man, I gotta get up, I gotta go do this, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done. But the Bible says, seek Him first, and all these things will be added unto you. All the desires of your heart will be added unto you. So that that was I like that, Frank.
And
Jug life.
Galatians 5:19 verses 19 to 21 kind of defines the flesh a little bit. And it says, now the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God.
Number one station in the nation.
Okay, Sister D, just cut us off, huh?
Well, just keep talking.
Yeah, she let us. But so it kind of gives us a picture of the things that the flesh would desire. And basically, if we are living in the flesh or going according to the desires of the flesh, ultimately, we're not going to inherit the kingdom of God. It's pretty serious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Man.
Now, on the other hand, the Spirit, in Galatians 5, verses 22 through 23, it goes on to talk about, what is the fruits of the Spirit, which would be love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So this kind of gives us just like a picture of what these two warring sides desire. Yeah. Anything else? Any other thoughts on what the flesh is, what the Spirit is, or?
I feel like it's a constant, I feel like when you have the desires of the flesh and the desires of the Spirit, it is a constant battle because they are the opposites of each other. Like, even you just saying the desires of the flesh and then the desires of the Spirit, like, it made me, like, think of, like, the total polar opposites of each one.
Yeah.
So, it's true, though, because when you're, like, living for the flesh, like, you feel like a different person than when you're living in the Spirit.
Yeah.
It's, like, two totally different people, so it has to be, like, you can't have this, like, you can't serve two masters.
Right.
So it's like, when for those of us who have probably, like, lived or tried to, basically, gave into our desires a lot more often, you feel different. You feel like a different person than when you're completely trying to, just serve the desires of the Spirit.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing, and I couldn't imagine that you would inherit the kingdom of God because the desires of the flesh don't have anything to do with anything spiritual.
Right.
So it only makes sense that that's what it is. The crazy part of it is that it's like what us as humans and sinful beings want. It's like we naturally don't want the desires of the Spirit, which is crazy to me because I always thought it was kind of crazy because it's like we're like, God created us, so it's like, I don't know why I did that. My bad. Sorry. Don't pay attention to this.
I ignored it.
Don't pay attention to this, guys. I don't know why I did air quotes. He did create us. My bad. And don't get backlash for that. So he created us and we have our sinful nature, but it's funny to me that our makeup wants, like, so much, like, we honestly have to, like, I don't want to say force, but, like, focus to want Spirit.
Yeah.
Naturally, we always want bad, which is crazy to me because then it's like we inherit nothing with wanting the flesh.
You want to know why? It's fun.
Yes, but not really, because I've lived that life, and honestly, it's not that great.
No.
Honestly, no, seriously, it's a thing to make you feel like it's fun, because it's fun for like 5 minutes, or if you're in the club, 3 hours. But like realistically, for all of us who've been there, I can speak for myself. Like my 25 years of living in the flesh, like my last 3 that I've lived in this or tried to live in the Spirit. I'm not perfect; He's not done with me yet. I love this life. I like my little boring life. Not that I think it's like super boring, but in comparison to what other people would think they do is for fun.
Right.
So it's really not that fun because I felt so empty. Like I was always searching for something to make me so happy. Like I needed all these people around me to do the same thing. I needed a club, loud music. I needed to block everything out. I couldn't just sit. So it really wasn't that great. And like when you think about it futuristically wise, like is it going to be worth burning for? Like is it going to be worth the end result?
And that's the thing we have to think about, because like you as well, I was out there, living that life as well, and I was having fun. But at the end of the night, I felt empty. So when I did give my life over to God, and it's funny because it's funny that you said the key word boring. That's what everyone thinks my life is. People like to party with and club with. They're like, man, what do you do, man? Your life is boring. I'm like, man, my life isn't boring. But even though I'm doing the best I can to live in the Spirit of God, when I do sin and I do wrong, and I submit to the desires of the flesh, I feel bad. Back then I didn't feel, bad, but I feel bad now. Like I did, like I cursed out my mom or hit my mom or something. That's how I feel. I'm just saying that's how bad I feel. And I immediately like, Lord, I'm sorry. I apologize. That could be, my relationship with God getting stronger. Me knowing how He feels when every time I do something wrong. Or that could be, me wanting to be better and do better and want to live for Him.
Yeah, it's kind of like this, like when you think about it. The more that you commune with God and like get in God in a circle, you enjoy because of the fact that at the end of the day, you are made from Him. But the more and more that you lean towards the flesh side and like you do everything that is like under the sun, at the end of the day, it just leaves like that empty pit up in your heart, like if you still have the Holy Spirit left within you. Because like the Holy Spirit is designed to actually lead you to truth. So it's letting you know that every single thing that you do is like just bad and it's just not worth it. But until like you able to like put more of God things within your circle, you will continue to fall after the flesh, because of the flesh is like somebody that is blind but is severely hungry and wants to find something to eat. You will continue to walk for days until you find something to eat. But the sad part is you don't know where food is, so you will endlessly walk forever and ever in a day. That's the way flesh like eats away at you. So it's just one of those things that we have to just come to the point of just really abiding within God and see the fun things that God has in store and don't think of it as boring. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
Something when Christina was saying that like we feel naturally inclined to the flesh and then it's like a struggle to want things of the spirit, it kind of ties into the next question I had. What works of the flesh do you think are most that are accepted, that seem to be accepted in our society, and in contrast, what aspects of the spirit do we not tend to celebrate as much, and even in a church environment?
I got one. Though honestly, I feel like I've heard the fruits of the spirit so many times, but I honestly think self-control. Like that was the one. I know that was the last one too, right?
Yeah.
And it was the one that stuck out to me the most because I don't feel like we understand how hard self-control is. Like maybe we do if you're going through it, but like it's not like, I don't know, like because people just do what they want. Like our society is meant to whatever makes me happy. I can do as much of it, as little of it as I want. There's no like self-control that they like really focus on as far as our society goes. And I feel like maybe as a church, but I feel like even I don't know. I don't feel like it's maybe really even talked about it. Because to me, it's kind of like for the church, it's like me growing up, and I was having this conversation with my friend, it was either one way or the other way. It wasn't like, and I know we're talking about like flesh, but there wasn't like a control. Like you have to understand, like it has to be controlled. You have to live, because your desires don't go away. Like I feel like they're controlled. Like, okay, let's take sex. Like sex, your desire for sex doesn't go away. It's controlled. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you've done it before. It doesn't just be like, boom, I just don't want it anymore. Like never in my life, I can go my whole life. It doesn't happen like that. I feel like it's controlled to where it doesn't control you. If you let the Lord work, it doesn't control you to where it probably used to. Where it's like, I gotta have it. I can't live without it.
Right.
And you're constantly feeding your flesh.
What He does is just replaces it in your mind. And
Right.
Have you, think of other things and focus on other things, and and when the time is right, He will put that desire back in. Perfectly when you get married. So when the time is right, He's going to give that desire back to you. He's not going to take it away from you. He's going to, put it on standstill, put it on ice, freeze it for a little bit, and then when He puts you with the right person, everything is going to unthaw, and it's going to happen naturally the way He intended it to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And to answer your question, like some of the things that are glorified is like sex is definitely glorified within movies and television shows.
Yes.
Even when you come from lovers of themselves, like you see a bunch of like gay and lesbian TV shows that actually glorify the point of being that kind of way. Like even transgenders are being glorified as far as with Bruce Jenner. Who definitely changed his. So like everything when it comes to the point of like sex, one way or another is being glorified. That's one of the things.
Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 25, he says, "And every man that striveth for mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we for an incorruptible one." He was basically, when he was talking about a race, when a person, matter of fact, a person who trains for and he's an athlete, he trains for perfection, you know? He trains to win a prize. And Paul's telling us that in this spiritual life, we need to train ourselves for an incorruptible crown. But we, like you said, like the church, we don't teach self-control. We don't teach how to. First off, we don't teach self-control, and second, we don't know how to teach self-control because we ourselves don't have it. So we have. He's talking about like when people like boxers, you see like they train to win a fight, right? We're in a fight, truthfully. You know, we don't fight against, like it says, flesh and blood, but against the principalities of darkness, of evil, you know? But how do we expect to overcome the flesh if we're not training to overcome the flesh? And he said to be temperate in all things. So honestly, when we're not temperate at one thing, is a domino effect. We're not going to be good at this thing, and it's going to affect this other thing. For example, one of my things I'm intemperate with is eating, you know? I've been trying to become a vegan, you know, trying to stay away from cheese, you know, but the only way to stay away from cheese is to stop eating cheese, you know, and that's more a willful thing, you know. So I did it for like 2 weeks or like 10 days, let's say, and I was practicing that, you know, it's pretty hectic, you know, but then this guy said something. He's like, okay, it's your cheat day, and I ate pizza, you know, but then I was like, all that hard work was for nothing now, because that's not mastery, you know. That was just a mimic of what mastery could become, you know. So we're in a race, you know. So like you said, the church is not teaching us that we're honestly in a race, you know. Like Christ is about to come, you know. Like what are we doing to prepare our hearts for Christ, you know? We have this. We like to train for facades, you know. We like to train like. Paul talks about like having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. We're good at forming a godliness, you know, but we're not good at being godly. So
he talked about that. He talked about that.
I didn't see that.
Okay, chaplain.
But we see how we have this form of godliness, and but we're not training for that. We're training for everlasting godliness, you know. But I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, that was one of the things Devin touched on. He was saying that we, like you said, like we're like situationally working on things, or like temporary spiritual, but we're not like being like it. This should be our being. It shouldn't be like a behavior that we practice. So yeah, definitely.
He was real with that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because a lot of times that is how we as a church are. Like, we try to practice being good.
Yeah.
Like, being what we feel like our parents would want us to be, or what the church would want us to be. Like, and I remember that feeling. I actually remember talking to Lawami about that and being like, I wasn't the person I used to be, but I still feel so empty. Like, I feel like I'm trying to be good. Like, I'm not going out anymore. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. But yet I still feel like my relationship with God isn't like where it's supposed to be. And he literally said the exact same to me. He's like, he said like you have, like he said something like you have, I don't know what he said. Anyways, sorry, Lawami. Can't remember what you said, but sorry, Lawami. But the point was like he was putting me on to like how I could like really develop my relationship with God and not focus so hard on like not doing this and not doing that. But that's how I was like, I want to say raised, but that's how I saw things. Like in order to be a good Christian, you just didn't do anything. You just didn't do anything. So, and that's just what I wanted to practice. Like I can't do anything that I think is wrong in the eyes of God. But yet I was like lost. Like, I was still lost as if I was living in the world. I just, like, didn't do anything of the world.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times that's where, like, we as a church don't help along the way, because then we see people living these, what we think are godly lives, because that's the way they appear to us, and they're really struggling.
Right.
They're super struggling, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's funny, because it's like, it reminds me of, like, what my friend Amanda would say. Like, she'd be like, people always look at me and my husband like we have no issues. And I laugh, because I'm like, whew, y'all don't even know. Because I was there from, like, day one.
Right.
But I understand how people can look and be like, oh, this has got to be, like, the perfect thing going on here. And I'm like, no, like, people have real issues.
Yeah.
What is on the outside is just this facade.
Right.
I think we tend to put on this facade because we can't be really who we are for what people will say of us, say about us.
So pretty much you're saying that we're more focusing on like how you're doing it instead of why you're doing it.
The act. Like, you're focusing on not doing the act instead of the spiritual part, the spiritual application. Because even when the Bible says, when he was like, well, they'll say, like, you know, you've done this in your name, and he's going to be like, I didn't know you. That's how I feel like it is. We're living this, like, we're trying to be so good, but we've lost our sense of relationship with the Lord. You know what I'm saying?
And Shay Honey commented and said that basically we're not teaching people how to have relationships. We're teaching them what not to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's why, like, when people talk about the commandments, they see regulations and restrictions and laws.
Thanks, Lavender.
And I'm like, it's not about that. Like, you got to dig deeper into the foundation of what the commandments truly are. And that's truly the foundation of love, you know? He's like, it's basically being selfless is what the commandment is telling you. Like, be selfless. Worship me and treat others as you would like to be treated. Be a servant, you know? Like Christ said, I came not to be served, but to serve. And that's the same mentality that we have to have, is to...
I don't know what that was.
to serve and not to be served, you know? So
on that note, what factors do you think make it so, because it is different.
Sister D, stop cutting us off, Sister D, okay?
She has to. Every 15 minutes has to do that.
So fighting the flesh it's not easy. So what factors do you think contribute to that? What makes it so difficult for us to fight this battle of being spiritual and fighting the flesh?
Because the fact that it's glorified. Like, if it wasn't glorified, I think it'd be an easier situation. Like, every time, like, when you turn on the radio, you can hear, like, different stuff that plays, or even turn on the TV, or even just walk outside. Like, you just see how much is glorified, and from there, it's harder to, like, combat it if you're not in your word, and if you're not, like, seeking God.
Yeah.
I mean, the world is not set up for us to live good Christian lives.
There you go.
So it's not set up that way. If it was, it'd be a lot easier. Like, if all of us were trying to walk, I mean, the entire world trying to walk in the Spirit, you know what I'm saying? We'd be good. Like, it would be cool. But the problem is, like, so many of us, I mean, a lot of the world is geared towards not living anything Christ-like. Like, nothing about your normal work environments, your everyday, day-to-day activities is centered around God. You have to make it that way. So it's like, it's completely hard. Like, it's hard to fight the desire when you have people like, oh, do this, do that. Or when you're trying to refrain, you know, people are like, well, why you do that? You think you better than me? Like, or whatever the case may be. It's not geared towards living Christ-like, living of the Spirit. So it's hard. But I feel like that's where God is, like, I feel like that's where he's separating us. So I feel like that's the true test. Like, are you going to let this world take hold of you, or are you going to fight with me? Because Jesus came here, and he had to deal with all the same things we had to deal with, and yet he walked. You know what I'm saying? And he did it, you know, sinless. So it's not like he walked this earth, and this earth wasn't what it is now. I mean, it's different things, but the desires were still there. They still had sex. Okay. They still had all type of stuff. Liars, cheaters, you know what I'm saying? All that stuff. So it was still going on. So, I don't know.
And something Delvin was saying in his sermon was that I quoted him, he said, we love making people believe we are something we aren't. And he was talking about how we're so caught up in carrying this image of a Christian that we're not even addressing the core problem, which is our mind. Yeah, and he was saying, we focus on behaviors and not the heart. So I'm gonna abstain from sex, and I'm good and I'm holy because I'm not having sex. But no, that's not the core. You don't have a connection with God, so you can abstain as much as you want. It's only a matter of time before you go back if you don't have that relationship and if you're not addressing the mind problem.
The one thing I like that he said though is he was like, be real with God. Be like, dude, I like this.
Exactly.
I like it.
Be honest with
Like
it.
that stuck out to me because no lie, sometimes I'd be like thinking, and now I'm not gonna lie to you. The next day I was like, God, let me tell you how I like it. Okay, I like this, and it's too hard. Like it's ridiculous how hard it is. You know what it is. Sometimes you just like it was real because I thought I was weird. Sometimes sometimes if I get too like, Lord Jesus, like I lose my prayer. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, let me open my eyes. Let me just talk to you real. How it's going. Sometimes that works for me. But I liked how he was just like, be honest.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that like, I can only speak for what I know as an Adventist because I don't know any other religions. But as our church, we're not built to be honest.
Right.
We're built to live this way.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I was in D.C. a couple weeks ago, I was talking to one of my good friends and her sister. They grew up Adventist. And they no longer practice being Adventist. And she was like, it felt like a cult to me. And I was like, well, tell me why. She was just like, it felt like they always could tell me what I couldn't do and never what I could do with no spiritual backing. And I remember talking to my friend about it and being like, I remember growing up that way. Only difference, I never left the church, but I remember growing up that way with like a lot of us who like our parents didn't want us to go to the movies, like you whatever. And like we all have our own beliefs on certain things, but it was like you just couldn't do. And then it was like, what can I do? And so you go back to your natural habit. Like when you turn back to the Lord, like when I turned back, it was just like I have to go back to not doing instead of like I have to just realize that this is what my flesh wants, and I have to figure out how to have this relationship with God so that He can change me, because I can't do nothing. I can abstain, I can not overeat, you know what I'm saying, but then eventually I'm going to go back to eating. Like me, I can't control my eating. It's terrible. Ask anybody, it's so bad. I'm working on it. But like I can stop for a little bit and then I'm like, ooh, like, but everything I want to eat, everything. Yeah, like that's just how it is, but that's because I haven't gone to God and be like, listen, this is a real issue.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to do it myself.
Yeah, just to piggyback a little bit. That's what I noticed about a lot of Christians. They lack honesty.
Yeah.
And we see that one of the fruits of the Spirit is to be honest. And it's like, if we can't be honest with ourselves, you're not going to be honest with God.
Yeah.
And then even your prayers are like, like, I don't want to even be mean, but it's like, God doesn't even want to hear your prayers, because it's like, He doesn't want lip service, but He wants heart service.
Yeah.
It's like superficial.
It's superficial, and God sees right through that. And remember, like, when Saul came, He's like, I don't look at the appearances of men or what they do, just to add on. He doesn't care about the outside, but what He comes on the inside. What's in there that I could use, you know? But then another thing that I feel like is a contributing factor to the desires of our flesh is that we don't understand the value of what God is offering us.
That's true.
And once we see, like, I just want to add, like, I read this quote this week that smacked me. And it said, the requirements of God must be brought home to the conscious. Men and women must be awakened to the duty of self-mastery, the need of purity, freedom from every depriving appetite and defiling habit. They need to be impressed with the fact that all their powers of mind and body are the gifts of God, and are to be preserved in the best possible condition for His service. And when I read that, I was like, oh, dang, like, I don't value my walk with Christ. And by me not valuing it, I don't see what I could do for Him.
Yeah.
And seeing that there's a lack of, like, this prize, remember Paul talks about there's a prize that we're going for. Imagine, like, there's a prize that, okay, we're gonna give you a Twinkie if you make it to the finish line. Me looking at that, I'm like, I don't want to win a race. But if there's a person that lacks appetite, they're gonna be like, I want that Twinkie.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna run the fastest like I never ran before. So when we see that the temporary indulgences that we go in has more value than the eternal gift that God has given us. So that's one factor that I've been noticing is contributing to my desires.
Garvey?
What I realized is that, like, we all can agree that the world has been there longer than us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the world has studied us in a way to know, like, our witnesses. To me, I call the word as aka the devil's playground. You guys get what I mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
When you go to a store, you see magazines, the words on bold, you put a picture, put like a naked woman or a woman bikini, all that, and our eyes just see it, and then we capture it, and then we program in our mind, okay, this is what we need, this is what we see, this is what we want. But us as Christian, we need to learn to suppress all that. There's this one verse I want to read to you guys. What is it? Yeah, Proverbs 2 verse 6. It says, "The Lord has given us wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding." And for us to acquire those knowledge and understanding is that from at first, we need to pray. We need to acknowledge our weaknesses. We need to be honest with Him.
Yeah.
If we're not honest with God, then that mask that we put on the face and go in in the street and people will see only the surface of us, then we're bluffing ourselves at the end.
Yeah.
So
So why is it so hard to be honest with Him?
Be honest with God.
Yeah, I mean, He knows everything.
Yeah.
I mean, He knows what.
Yeah.
So why so hard for us just to come out and just be like, "Hey, Lord, blah 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 blah."
I know for me personally, I used to do that where I did something and I knew it was wrong and I would just pray oh God, just please forgive me this and help me to stop doing it. But I wouldn't say God, I really don't want to stop doing it. I like doing this.
Yeah.
And it's hard because it feels it's like in your mind ugh, I'm telling God that I like this and that I want to keep doing this. He's just gonna just strike me down now. Because you're brought up with this you are supposed to not like this. You're not supposed to do this. So it feels weird to say I enjoy it, I like it, and I want to do it. It's it's almost defiant towards God. But I started actually doing a while ago. I started praying, admitting to God, which is when Delvin said that in his sermon. I loved that when he said about being honest and just admitting you don't want to stop, because I experienced doing that, and it's so liberating to just say, God, I enjoy this, and I feel like I don't want to stop. Please help me with that. Help me to have the desire to not want to do this, to allow you to help me. And it takes so much off your back just to be able to admit that.
I think also we've made God out to be this mean God.
Yeah.
Instead of the loving, caring God. I think we don't really have any. Some of us do, but some we don't have this concept that God is truly loving and in the saving business. So even when we are I don't want to say it, and I'm with you. It was kind of you grow up and it's you're supposed to not want these things. If you did want it, you were this bad person. You're supposed to not want these things. But the truth is, we all struggle with some desire that is not Christ-like. Whatever it may be. Mine's going to be different from yours. That doesn't make it any less whatever, but we are going to struggle with that. So to me, it's we don't have this concept that God truly is this loving God wanting to save us. So the more honest we are, the more we give ourselves to Him truly. And I feel that's the thing of being honest. It means I'm letting you know this is me. I'm going to lay it out on the table. I'm giving my full self to you. Because it's when we're God, just let me stop. Just let me stop. You know what it is. Let me stop. Some of us don't even say what it is. We're just that embarrassed. Let me stop. Let me stop. You know what it is, God, what I did yesterday. You saw me. You know what I'm saying? It's just just be real. And to me, that's more, it's liberating. It's look, God, I don't want to stop, but I know it's not of you. So I know I need to stop, but I can't do it by myself.
Right.
So to me, it's because we don't have this relationship with God, knowing how loving and how much He wants us to give everything to Him. We have a God who wants us to literally bear all. I don't even know my friends who want me to bear all. Literally give us all, lay all your burdens at His feet. I don't think sometimes we really get that idea of it.
One thing that I've noticed in my life was that it's not, how do I explain it? It's it's not the way we're supposed to look, if that makes sense. And I've come to that conclusion is that Adventists, or let's just say Christianity in general, we have built this standard that is, if I don't look like that,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna admit that I don't look like that.
Yeah.
Number one station.
Can we talk over it? Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, so since I don't look this way, I'm not gonna admit that I don't look this way because that's not what I don't want to embarrass myself, you know. So I've come to the conclusion is that we just live to the standard of humanity, and that's we fall short. We're falling short of the standard of humanity when God has given us a standard to start out with. He's like, come now, let us reason together. Like, though you're filthy, though you're ugly, though your righteousness is as filthy rags, I'm trying to robe you with righteousness. I'm trying to give you purity. I'm trying to give you this. But I'm like, Lord, but that's not what the world is asking me to do. I have to have it. I have to look like this before I come to you.
Right.
So that's my standard. And this is the standard I want to live by, just because that's what the world is doing, you know. But the Lord is offering something way greater than that. So that's where I see the other part of that.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get past the, what we want for ourselves, and just rest in the assurance of what God has for us, even though we don't know what it is, it'll be so much easier.
Right.
It's that whole trust factor. Like, we just truly trust in the Lord, that the Lord will remove this thing, and like trust in the Lord has something better for us. Once we realize that trust, then we are able to. But until we can trust that what's behind that fence, God has something great for us, we will always continue to be in that same trap.
Right.
That goes into something, you said the word trust. That goes into something deeper, because a lot of people feel like, how can we trust somebody with this information, even though they know everything, but we don't see them, we don't know them. So how can we break it, really open up and break it down to them?
Right.
That's the point. We don't know them.
Right. Exactly.
That's the big issue.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking back to Emilio Navarro. He was giving a sermon, and he was talking about how a lot of times when we hear a sermon, we say, "Oh man, my uncle should have been there. He needed to hear that." And it made me think about how we so easily see the problems in other people, but we're always blind to what's going on with us.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's so easy for us to see the sins of the flesh in others and not within ourselves?
Because we're not chastising ourselves.
We don't want to see it
we
in
want to put
ourselves.
blame on others, so
Yeah.
that way at the end of the day we are free and clear.
We don't want to see it in ourselves. We don't want to see us looking at ourselves. Man, I look like this. I'm that filthy. I'm that ugly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We don't want to look at ourselves in that light. Yeah, it's easy for us to see it in somebody else because that's not us.
Right.
Yeah.
We're like, well, at least that's not me. But in reality, it really is.
Yeah, it's easy for us to judge other people than to judge ourselves.
Right.
But I feel sometimes that the only reason we can recognize in others is because we recognize in ourselves.
Oh,
We don't want to admit that.
Yes.
So like,
right.
look at that. Yeah. He's stealing, and then you like put a candy bar in your pocket. So we try to put the whole burden on them, so they could get chastised. That we may be relieved through their chastisement.
And you know what?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's psychology.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's why. I understand that now because that's why little kids. Well, such and such did it too. My son used to tell me all the time, well, Daddy, Donovan did it too. Well, I don't care. I didn't see Donovan do it. I saw you do it. And so, man, I like that, man. Say that again, man.
I don't know. I can't.
Oh,
It was a one-time thing.
It's recorded.
But
no, man, go check it out on Periscope.
It's true, because like I remember reading about this. Like a lot of times when we dislike other people, we get very irritated at other people, is usually because they display some type of characteristic or they have something about them that we hate about ourselves. So it becomes hyper vigilant to us.
Wow.
Mike said we magnify other people's sins to make our seem minimized.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I like
think
that word.
we worried way
Hypervigilant.
too much about like other people and what they got going on. Like we're always like looking like, let me see what you got going on. And I think like the issue with that is like when you point the finger, like they really say, it's like 10 pointed back at you. So it's like we got to be careful when we're like, oh, you know what? They should have heard that sermon, or they have this issue. It's like, first of all, look at the issues in yourself. Like, really look at the issue within yourself and what you're going through, and let God work on other people.
Yeah.
Like you ain't God. You ain't got to worry about what other people got going on. Like just unless you have a relationship with that person, and you're like, okay, whatever. Like I'm just trying to look out for you, whatever. But I just feel like far too much we're just always pointing the blame. Like this is what you're doing and that's what you're doing. and it doesn't make us look good. Like, it makes us look worse. Because I feel like the person, like, I know when somebody's pointing something at me, unless, like, we have that type of relationship, the instant thought is, like, you better be Ellen G. White her dang self before you come tell me something. No, for real. And I had that moment this week. Like, I really had that. I was like, I'm sorry. You said what? Like, I don't think you should be saying nothing to me right now. For real. Like, and it didn't make me respect that person. Like, it made me, like, dislike the person. You know? Because it's like, why are you pointing out anything that I'm doing if your life isn't this way, or if we don't have that relationship? Because I'm not saying you shouldn't, point out the things of your friends or whatever, but I just feel like, you do more harm than good when you get to pointing fingers at what people are doing in their lives.
Message. Yeah, I agree with what you said. Like, Matthew 7 verse 1 and 2 says, don't judge, so that you won't be judged. You receive the same judgment you give. Whatever you dealt out will be dealt onto you.
And Paul adds on, he's like, don't judge others. Don't even judge yourself, because that's putting you in like some severe stuff,
Yeah.
And normally when it's dealt back to you, it's dealt back worse than the other person got it.
Exactly.
So,
But that's the reason why Jesus said, make sure to get the speck out of your own eye before trying to get the plank out of somebody else's, because at the end of the day, like, you doing the same thing what that person's doing. So learn it from Jesus himself.
Right.
For real.
So, first, this is something that Delvin also hit on. So 1 Peter 5, verse 8 says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. So Delvin was kind of hitting on the importance, as part of fighting the desires of the flesh, of being sober-minded. What does that mean? What does it mean to be sober-minded?
When I heard him say that, it stood out to me, because I asked myself that question: what does that mean? And the only thing I could even make it even come close to was being an alcoholic. An alcoholic trying to sober up, so that he can think clearly. So the way I interpret it was him saying being sober-minded is, be in that mind frame so that you can, be clear. Your mind can be clear so that when the Lord does speak to you, you will be able to understand what he's saying to you. Because one of the things when he was talking about being sober-minded was, he said, when you pray, he said, just don't get up, stay there and listen. He said, because just wait for him to say something back to you. And if you are not sober-minded, if you're just rushing through your prayer just to get your day started, you're not going to hear what the Lord got to say to you. And it's funny, he said that last week Thursday, I woke up at like 3:45 in the morning and couldn't go back to sleep. And someone had always told me, hey, every time you wake up at that time of night, it's the Lord trying to talk to you. And so I was like, it happened to me like maybe 3 or 4 nights in a row. And every night I went back to sleep. But this particular night I got up. I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to do what you asked me to do. So I got up and I prayed. I immediately hit my knees and I started praying. Once I finished praying, I stayed there. After about 20 minutes, I heard a voice, as clear as you guys are talking to me right now. He said, Paul, I got a message. I got something to tell you, but don't you dare fall asleep on me. And I stayed there for like another 45 minutes, literally on my knees and just waiting. I didn't hear anything else after that because I started to doze off and I just climbed back in my bed and went to sleep. But it was amazing, and immediately when I heard sober-minded, hey, that's what the pastor was talking about. At that particular time, there was nothing on my mind. At 3 o'clock in the morning, what are you thinking about? Especially being woken up out of sleep, you're not thinking about nothing. My mind was completely clear, and for the first time ever in my life, I heard what I believe was the Lord's voice. And that was an awesome experience for me.
Well, when I hear like sober-minded, you think about, to piggyback a little bit what you said about like. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that sober-minded to think about rehab. Like, you go to a rehab, and it takes time for you need to, like, admit your faults, admit that you, like, it is your actions that put you there, and once you have that clarity of admit that your issues and your fault, then you came to that realization that, okay, so I need help, so I'm seeking help, and it's a long process. In order to, like, you need, like, sober is have a clarity of mind.
Yeah.
So that's what, when I hear that, that's what I mean, sober minded. And once you get that clarity, that's when you allow, like, you know, the voice of God, like, inhabit in you. And then you start listening. And then that healing process will take time. People tend to, like, think that healing process will come quick like that. It's impossible. You need to take that time. You're sobering up.
Right.
To reach that point where you can help others that are in the same spot. So that's what I think about sober minded.
Yeah, and it's like, to me, it's like, at the end of the day, have your mind on God. Because that's the only way that you can be sober. If you don't do that, like, you have, like, the carols of this world, like, you have, like, your favorite song popped in your head, like, you have, like, different situations going on, where if you was, like, clearly within the mind of God, you're able to truly hear what he says. That's what I see it as.
Yeah. And there's so many things in this world that can interrupt our sobriety, in a sense. So it's not just, like, literally drugs, alcohol, which is a whole nother topic, but which I think is one of the biggest tools of the devil, drugs and alcohol. Everybody is under, like, there's so many people who are just under their minds are under the influence of something, whether it be an actual, you know, narcotic drug, or it could be certain medications, like, anyways, whole other topic. But our mind is once our mind is taken, that's it. That's all the devil needs to get us to do what he wants us to do. And I don't think we realize how critical it is that, one, that we are aware of our level of sobriety, of mental sobriety, but that we fight, or we protect our minds. Because music, who you hang around, what you're eating, your state of your health, all of these things can interrupt the channel to God speaking to you, your connection with God.
It's anything altering. Like, when I think of, I'm with everybody else, but I think of sober-minded, I definitely think of, like, somebody trying to come off of something that had a control over them at some point, whatever it is. I mean, we tend to think alcohol and drugs, but there are so many things that have holds on us, because for some of us, alcohol and drugs was never our issue. Like, drugs was never my issue. Alcohol wasn't a huge issue for me, like it has been for some other people, but there are other things that were issues for me. So I think of when we release the control and we give God the control, we become clear. Our mind becomes clear, so we can have, it's like giving him access. Like, if you've ever, like, seen an alcoholic or try to speak with an alcoholic, somebody actually under the influence of drugs, they're not mentally with you. Like, you're trying to talk to them, you're like, hello, is anybody there? And for me, like, being in a field where you see alcohol and drugs so prevalent, it, like, makes you think of the things that control your mind. Like, that, I was just thinking about that, because I'm always preaching about how, like, people justify alcohol, and I'm like, if you only see the effect that it has long term, like, for people who are like, I'm a social drinker, like, I only drink, you know, when my cousin comes in town. Like, no, it really does. And you see people who started off like, you know, oh, I had a back problem and they gave me hydrocodone at the, and now you're a full-blown addicted to opiates. You know what I'm saying? Like, for all those people who have addictions now, they never started thinking they were going to have an addiction. None of them ever were like, yep, I want to be addicted today. Like, that's what I want to do. And struggle getting off it my whole life. You know, like, it really severely affects, you know, and alcohol has always been the biggest one to me because it's legal. You know what I'm saying? And people just justify it any which way they can. I was there. I've done it. But it makes me think of, like, how you're not in your right state of mind. It doesn't matter if you had 1 shot, 7 shots. The minute something altering is in your body, you're no longer the person or who you were when you're on off anything. So you can't tell me it has the same effect. Like, oh, I'm not drunk, so I'm this person. You know, like, you're not the same person as if when you wake up in the morning and you have nothing in your system. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I understand what you're saying. Like, when you woke up, like, nothing's on your mind. Like, sometimes that's the best time to be with God, because the minute your work day starts, everything, it's like your mind is all over the place, and you find yourself, like, even I find myself sometimes in prayer, like,
I would drift off thinking about 30,000 things. I'm like, ooh, God, get back to this prayer. Like, it's
Like,
terrible.
Lord,
Like,
keep me on track.
and I feel horrible. Like, even today, I'm not even gonna lie, in church, they were praying, and I was like thinking about something else. I was like, ooh, let me get back in this prayer. Like, I was like, wow, like, so far how my mind is like off. And we have to be sober-minded in order for God to really speak to us.
Yeah, and you can even look at it as terms of like something simple as it being constantly tired. Being constantly tired, you can be attacked by Satan at no problem at all. Even being hungry, like being hungry all day, like literally your mind is just blocked. These are some of the things that are just simple, but it just really messes with you at the same time.
And Atara commented and said hers is reality TV, which I must admit is a lot of struggle.
Come on, Atara.
You know something?
You heard Chapter Fair say that.
TV. I've tried to get into it, but I can't.
That's why.
Frank, what were you saying?
No, I was just gonna say I like the term that we got 5 more minutes, but I like the term that you used, that it was being under the influence of something. So it's like when I hear being under the influence, I see it as being hypnotized by something, being taken out of your body and letting somebody else take your place. So it's like the devil's a roaring lion seeking to devour. And it says to be sober and vigilant, you have to be able to not allow Satan to control you in those ways. Like you said, like when your mind is not thinking about nothing, think about Christ. Because Satan can, that's the minute Satan could, that's the moment Satan wants to get you the most. He's like, if he's not thinking, that's another body.
Right, exactly.
If he's not on his toes and walking on eggshells, I'm gonna make sure he's slipping out here,
Right.
And Satan,
I hate that devil.
yeah. And remember,
On it, man.
he's been hypnotizing people since the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Like, ain't nothing new to him, And he does it in the same ways all this time, It's through the mouth that he always gets people, if that makes sense. Like, through appetite, like, think about it, smoking, drinking, even your own, whatever you're reading, is influencing you. Like, we talked about this a while back, to keep your hearts with all diligence. And Paul talks about abstain from all the appearances of evil. And Ellen G. White talks about to guard the avenues of your soul, When we put all when we put our guard down, Satan knows when your guard is down. He studies you day and night. He even studies while you're sleeping.
He knows you better
He's twitching right here. So I can wake him up. Satan knows, but not to give him any credit. It's just he is a student of sin. I mean, he's a professor of sin. So he's gonna study you inside and out.
Yeah.
So
He prays on your emotion.
right. He knows. Oh, I feel. So 3 more minutes.
With our last 3 minutes, how do we become more dependent on the spirit to guide us rather than our flesh?
Feed the spirit. Read that Bible. Pray. Get yourself together with the Lord.
Prayed up.
You got to.
Yeah.
Got to build that relationship with Christ. If you don't have that relationship with Christ, man, you're going to fall for anything.
Yeah, never give up. And like, to what she said earlier, when she was in church, and like, she was like, we were praying, and then she just cut herself. That's good. Because you better cut yourself. Not many people would just cut themselves. They're just like focus on what they want to focus on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
Amen.
If you say no, that's where it starts. I think that's the once you start saying no to yourself, I think that's a progressive. I think one of the questions was like, when do you know when you have the fruit of the spirit?
Yeah.
I think it starts when you start saying no. Like, I'm taking control of my body. Like, you don't owe me. I've been bought with a price. My body is a temple of Christ. Claim it and always trust. Doesn't matter how much you pray or how much you read the Bible, because if you ain't trusting, honestly, it's like God knows who He trusts.
Stand up for your morals. That's what you do. Stand up for it.
Surround yourself with things of the Lord, like everything. I know there's certain, like in our work environments and stuff where we're probably not always surrounded by Christians, but I always felt like surrounding myself with things of the Lord, like my music, and like it's practicing to me like something, and then it becomes natural. Like for music, I just always have it on 106.7. Like it just always, like I just always. I mean 106.3.
Yeah, just break
Sorry.
that habit.
Isn't
That's
that
what you
like
do.
Pop and rock.
Yeah, 106.3. I always have it on the gospel station, or my gospel Pandora. You know what I'm saying? Just something that's always gonna keep me focused on the Lord. You know, and surround myself with people who are like-minded. Not tell yourself put yourself in a box, but that you want to be around people who are going to uplift and encourage you. So that way, if there is a time where you're not feeling spiritually, somebody's able to step in for you.
Right.
And that's what this whole church and community is about. We're all supposed to help each other out and walk this walk together.
Support group.
So to close out, I just want to end with the 3 points that Delvin gave in his sermon. He said, first, we got to be honest with God. So being real when you don't want to give something up, letting him know that. And then second, being obedient. So once we come to him and we be real and he tells us what we need to do, then we need to actually do that, which trust comes in that too.
Yeah.
And then 3, making sure your pattern is the right pattern. So what are you fashioning your life after? Making sure that is of God. So, thank you all for being on the show today. I think this was a great discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Stay encouraged.
This is not just this topic is not just for one day. You know.
Right.
Next week,
Yes.
tune in.
Exactly.
sessions.
May 20th will be part 2 of Desires of the Flesh. So make sure you come out. Check out Connect Orlando on Instagram for further information.
Also, keep looking at the Orlando page. I will post that information on donating to the earthquake victims down in Ecuador.
So that's the KosherSALT Radio page on Facebook, KosherSALT Radio.
And then stay tuned with connectorlando.org for any FNL updates or DSW or TAG initiative.
All right.
Please holler at y'all later. Peace. Deuces.
Does it? Let me see if it launches. Yes.
I like this.
That was beautiful.
I like the 5 heartbeat version.
So we both just started working.
I brought that.
Well, yeah.
That's your journal.
That's my journal, my Bible journal.
Keep it around you, man. You don't mess up. I'm my brother, Charles. Nice to meet you again.
Pleasure.
I want to share something with you real quick. Well, you can get up on it. Stepped out. Talk about it. if you
Me?
want to. No, him.
Oh, I was like, what?
All right, brother.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Yep.
Nice seeing you.
All right,
Yeah,
brother.
I'm seeing you too.
Nice
Gotta
meeting
hit
you.
these books.
Man, I feel you, dude.
I ain't got past. I already know. So
Come on, did you remember mine?
I'm not into it for whatever.
Oh,
it
yep,
is.
not even on there.
I was just about to say your
Nice.
name, too.
Remind me.
Christina.
Christina.
I was just about to say your name, but
Thanks
I
for
ain't want to.
coming.
You know. All right, girl.
Thank you for inviting me. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're available, I would like you to come back, especially since we're short. So,
End of the month.
he's all
Frank, you don't want to be in our fashion show?
So anything that
Frank should be in the fashion show, man. He got good looks, got
I
the
know.
smile.
Okay.
He's a good dresser.
Got
the waves in
I
the
get
hair.
big-minded on, you know what I'm saying? You see, that's why I'm
That's why you got
mortified.
your. That's why you got
Mortified
your
to
wife.
soul.
That's why you got your wife. Your wife keeps you humble.
I know, but you know, like
Joe
sometimes, like
Walker?
the flesh right there. Like,
Well, in that case,
Alright,
in that case,
yeah.
I was trying to figure out how to save it
Maybe.
because I want to transfer it to YouTube.
You can save it on there?
Yeah, like there's Atari does it, but I don't know if I did it or not.
Let me see if I can try to find it. So
It's like something like save to gallery or something. Oh, let me